we are in December. This is our last little gathering prior to the end of 2024. Probably saw a couple of messages that came out in the past couple of weeks. We're going to start filling in slots for the various Zoom calls and stuff we have in 25. I'm going to send those out again because we still have a number of openings. Also, for those of you who are local to Maryland, our SABR Day will be February 17th at Peabody Heights. That is President's Day. So, I don't have anything else to really announce aside from the fact anybody who wants to contribute to the CHOP needs to get their articles in by the last day of December to Ruth. And we're honored to have Charlie tonight, who I believe is home in Baltimore right now.
I am home.
He's going to do his presentation on his experiences back in July at Rickwood Field. So I will let him do his own introduction and he can take it away.
All right, thanks, Peter. I'm going to move into the share screen mode. So let me get what I want on the screen to be up first, and then we'll move into the share screen mode. Okay. All right. Let's see what happens. I'm going to share the screen now. Are you seeing? This is what I wanted to show you. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see that picture of the babe standing in front of Rickwood Field?
Correct. We're good.
Okay, just want to make sure. So just as a quick little introduction to what I'm actually going to talk about, I'm going to jump and show you a couple of pictures that I took back in 2002, the first time I ever went to Rickwood Field, or maybe it was 2001. I was working for the Babe Ruth Museum, and that's why the babe's there, because we brought him all around the country, and we were setting up a traveling exhibit for the Babe Ruth Museum, where the Barons played at their other ballpark, which is now their old ballpark because they got a new ballpark. And the new one's fantastic too, but there's nothing like Rickwood Field. And when you see this is, I was very privileged to be able to walk through here all by myself with my friend Gary Sieradkowski, as you know. We worked together for the Babe Ruth Museum that year, taking our show on the road. So briefly, I'll show you some old pictures before I show you the new ones. That's what it looked like. Look at the layers of paint, the moss on the concrete. The aging. I mean, this is like a fine aged vintage ballpark, and it's amazing that they've done what they have with it to keep it up as well as they have now. But back then it was a little bit beat up, but still beautiful, just the same. I remember thinking what a great roll of film, actual film, that I got that day. And there's no reshooting, there's no doing it on your phone and erasing it. I was shooting with a real camera, and all these shots that came back, I was very pleased with. They used that sign. They used Rickwood in the Cobb movie. You might remember the Tommy Lee Jones movie, and that sign, I can't remember if that sign was vintage from the old days or vintage from the movie. I believe that was a movie prop by the time that I went in there. Here we're up on top in their little crow's nest press box or broadcast booth, whatever was up there on the top. Still, that corner still looks relatively the same. You know, I got a flashback in my mind here. This is the van we moved in. This is the van we took the Babe Ruth Museum's traveling exhibit around the country in. And if you look at those bumper stickers, that's from all the ballparks that we stayed in. It was like a duffel bag. I would buy a sticker at every minor league ballpark we went to and put it on the back of the truck. And I hate to say it, but I bet that this fountain at one time was either for whites or blacks, but probably not both back in the old days, because there was a lot of, obviously, segregation during the Negro League days of Rickwood Field. Tremendous distance to the outfield, 478 feet, and they had this barbed wire over the fence. I don't know if it was to keep you in or keep you out, but it was, and there's a historic marker that was still on the outfield, the original outfield wall. When you go there now, this wall is behind the wall that's up now. There's Gary. Gary is up in the scoreboard. We're having a lot of fun. We had free reign of the place. we just walked in and started wandering around and climbing ladders and climbing up on things, and nobody was even there to give us any kind of tour. There were some brochures for a self-guided tour, which you could grab as you walked in. I don't know if the clock was right, but it might have been about 11:38 in the morning. And there's me poking my head out of the scoreboard. And I think the clock was right, because if you look, it's moving. So that must have been a working clock. Here's the hand-operated scoreboard of the old Rickwood Field. And here's some period advertising that may also have been a movie prop. I'm not quite sure, because I do remember that the Cobb was filmed there a few years earlier. The entrance still looks very similar. I'm going to show you some of the new pictures, but this is how it looked back then. You can see, look who's up in the crow's nest, the Babe himself. Yeah, he had a way of getting in the pictures. And there you can see the some of those seats don't look quite as warm, but they're not getting that same aerial view. But these seats look a little newer than the ones that were closer to home plate. And they got those sunken dugouts and bullpens down there. That grandstand seating looked kind of the same when I was there this past year. But again, I'm trying to go through these quickly, and you can see the ripped up old batting cage. Look at the mossy colored concrete. And that was a brochure that they handed out there. All right. Okay, there's some pictures of the history. I'm blasting through. Now we're going to move into the main part of the presentation. This is this year at Rickwood Field. So what they called MLB at Rickwood. They also have a minor league game that they play there every year. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. There we go. So who got this SABR bulletin when it came out this year? I would imagine some of you still get the journal. So you know who does the artwork for the cover of the journal? Gary Sieradkowski, the guy who was up in the scoreboard in that picture that I showed you before. And this guy up here, Gary told me that I was the inspiration for this character. So he told me, you're on the cover of the journal this month because I put you up there. That's Gary's take on me being in the scoreboard. When I arrived at the ballpark, this was the July of 2024, this year, I was so pleasantly, I don't know, not surprised, but I just loved what they had done with it. And this was Janet Marie Smith's Canopy Company, which has its headquarters here in Baltimore. They were in charge of all these aesthetics and all of turning this place into a venue that could host this kind of event. And they even did these posters that you see hanging along the periphery. So this is right on my initial approach into the ballpark this past July. They had a fan fest that they created out in the parking lot, which was interactive and wonderful. All these informative kiosks. There was a bunch of concessions, food concessions, and games for the kids to play, interactive concessions. There was a guy spinning bats from the Louisville Slugger Bat Company, brought his lathe with him out there. There was all sorts of things to see and do that could keep you occupied. You really needed to get there early, because if you got there too soon to game time, you might not have had time to take all this in. It was really great. I think, does that mean someone has a question? I think so.
Charlie, your screen has not advanced. You're still in your first visit.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me see how to do this. Okay, it's advancing for me.
Thanks for
Okay.
taking my question.
Yes, thank you for telling me. Okay, so can you see this picture?
Still seeing your first visit to Rickwood with the babe.
Oh, really?
I don't know if
Okay.
others are having the same
Your
problem,
screen,
but
you are screen
at
sharing. It says to me
at
I'm
least me
screen
and
sharing.
Wayne
Okay.
are
Maybe
myself and
stop
Wayne
sharing
Lawford.
and share again.
There
Okay,
you
I'll
go.
do that.
I'm just
Let's-
seeing the first screen.
Okay, let's go back. I'm going to stop sharing and I'll share again. Let's go back to it here. Okay. You are sharing. Okay. Stop sharing. Okay. I'm going to call this up again. I'm going to go over here. Let's see what happens if I share it again. Okay. Can you see that now?
Now we
You
see
can-
a thing that said, there you go. Yes, this is outside the park, it looks like, with a big
Yeah,
picture of
that's what I was
Josh
talking about.
Gibson.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Fan Fest. This is what they had set up. Okay, well let's hope they keep the slides keep moving. I'll try and jump to them if they don't move. There, did it change just now? Is there another new picture there?
Yes,
Oh.
we are the
Okay.
ship.
We
All
are
else
this.
to
Okay,
see.
looks like it's moving.
For us to
This is
see.
all part of that Fan Fest that was going on out in the parking lot that I was talking about. All created just for this event. You could really learn a lot by walking around and reading all of these. You know, the narrative that they created. It was quite immense in size and in depth of what they were trying to convey. You can see the period that they're covering here, 1920 to 1948. Inside the ballpark. Now you should be seeing Willie Mays' locker,
Yes. Yep, we
I
see it.
think. Okay, good. Good to hear. So these were all fabricated again by Janet Marie Smith's Canopy Company, and they really turned the ballpark into a museum. Wonderful little exhibits. Here you can see that Mays was already the star of this show before what happened. He was already, there was a lot of focus on Willie because he's the most famous really of the old Birmingham Black Barons. He played on the team that won the Negro League World Series in 1948 in this ballpark. There was lots of speculation as to whether Willie would show up, but he was already a presence there anyway, whether he was there physically or not. These wonderful artifacts, some of them are actual artifacts from those periods, scorecards and things like that. There's a Negro Southern Leagues Museum in Birmingham, which I would highly recommend if anybody finds themselves in Birmingham. Make sure you go to the Negro Southern Leagues Museum. A lot of the items in these displays were on loan from that museum. There you can see a scorecard from a game between Kansas City and the Blacks and the Black Barons, and some more Willie Mays stuff. Here was the makeshift press box that they created for auxiliary media. It's a small press box that they have in the grandstand area, maybe seats about 6 or 10 people, maybe a dozen at the most. There were a few people in there, but the auxiliary media that was coming around, and there was a pretty good amount of people who came from around the country to cover the game. They put us out in left field on these bleacher sections, which they put laptops, and you had connections to Wi-Fi and everything. It was actually pretty well done. The screens, and you had lots of room to work. Here's where my designated seat. I think I kind of signed up late to cover this event, but I was covering for the local paper in Cooperstown, and I had about the last seat in the press box, which didn't bother me at all. There's a great view still, and you had air behind you, which you didn't really have when you were down lower. Okay, again, a shot there at the field. I moved around a little bit, but that was my designated spot. You can see what they did here. There's the iconic scoreboard, which is still in its place. A lot of what was there looks a lot different than those old pictures, that's for sure. And then they created this kind of VIP club. The Willie Mays Pavilion was for players, wives, and family, and different dignitaries that were involved. That was actually a private place, but it would become a focus of people in the hours to come because of what it has up there and what they created. This is a facsimile of the manager's office, what it might have looked like back in the old days. I love these old Varga illustrations and the period newspapers. Again, this was all created by Janet Marie Smith's Canopy Company in conjunction with the Negro Leagues, the Negro Southern Leagues Museum. So they happen to have all this stuff around. It felt like, I can tell you for a fact, it felt like traveling through time. Being on this trip was the closest thing I can recall to time travel. I couldn't believe the portal that we had entered and somehow came out of when it was over. Of course, the Babe was there. The Babe was everywhere. So he had been to Rickwood at some point. Here he is with some kids. And these are, again, facsimile lockers. They turned the actual locker rooms into, period locker rooms that they turned also into museum exhibits. So the players were not using these old locker rooms. They had these things set up in the parking lot, these kind of trailer locker rooms, these mobile units that they were staying in. But the old locker rooms were converted into these neat museum exhibits. So this was once a functional locker room, but this was great, and it was all included with the price of admission. If you got to the ballpark and you could get up from your seat during the game and go look at this stuff as well. I just happened to do it before, get there a little early. There's a monitor of what was happening outside at the time. And again, representation of all the old Negro Leagues teams. Here's an exhibit, which this sign might be a little bit off. It says Negro Leagues players from Alabama in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. It was not just Negro Leagues players. It was Major Leagues players as well, like Billy Williams here, who I don't think ever played in the Negro Leagues. If anybody knows better about that, they can correct me, but I think he had transitioned afterwards. But there were other guys that were represented in here, like Satchel Paige and Willie Mays and Monty Irvin, who all played in the Negro Leagues. And some of these jerseys were replica jerseys, and some of them were actual jerseys too. There was a combination. Great variety of things to see and look at. Hank Aaron represented back here. He did play in the Negro Leagues. This was in one of the areas by the gift shop. They converted the gift shop also into museum space, and they created this replica of a Jackie Robinson locker. They created a double Jackie Robinson locker because they needed 2 lockers to put all their Jackie Robinson memorabilia in. I thought this looked great, by the way. Here we are standing up for the national anthem before the game, just getting ready. There was 2 games. There was a minor league game the first day, and the major league exhibition game, which was between St. Louis and San Francisco. The minor league game counted in the standings for both of the games did, for the Birmingham and Mobile team as well, the local team. Okay, I see Tim has another message here for me.
My question is, why are there empty seats in the photo?
Because the minor league game was nowhere near as well attended as the major league game. I guess they just kind of took it for granted. It was sold out for the major league game. And good question. So there, early on, that's what it looked like. So it's just getting rolling. They had really cool, like satin Negro Leagues uniforms on, the Mobile team and the Birmingham team. And let's see what's the next one. Here we are. This scoreboard obviously was not there in the old days. It's a big video screen, which was installed specifically for the game, but left there. So they can have more events like this at Rickwood. I'd hate to think that it was a one-off, and I don't think it was. It might have been a one-off as far as Major League Baseball was concerned, but for that event, maybe there'll be another Major League game there someday. But from what I understand, because of all this refurbishing and remodeling of the ballpark, they're utilizing the place more. They now have 3 ballparks in Birmingham. The umpiring crew for the game that day was also historic. It was the first time in Major League history that the umpiring crew was completely comprised of all Black umpires. Here we were in the auxiliary press box at the moment that we found out Willie Mays was dead. It was surreal, to say the least. Everybody was thinking about Willie. Everybody was wondering if Willie's going to show up. He even issued a statement the day before saying, "Thanks, but no thanks." He said, "I just can't make it." And I don't think anybody realized when he issued the statement what bad shape he was actually in that night, because he issued the statement a night or 2 before he died. It might have been within 24 hours. And word spread like wildfire through the ballpark. Everybody was getting text messages, and it wasn't long before it started showing up on the television. And all of the ceremony that they had planned on having for Willie the next day at the game, they just went and had it spontaneously they threw up a tribute to him on the scoreboard, which they played a little, I don't know, 3 or 4 minute movie. It wasn't that long because it was still within the game. And I remember while the tribute was going on the scoreboard, the infielders were throwing the ball around the infield in between innings. And just like that, the show must go on. Willie was dead and they just kept playing. I think it was in the 6th inning. Here's the message that he issued. I wish I could come out to Rickwood Field this week to be with you and enjoy that field with my friends. Rickwood's been a part of my life for all my life. Since I was a kid, it was just around the corner there from Fairfield, and I felt like it had been there forever, like a church. The first big thing I ever put my mind to was to play at Rickwood Field. It wasn't a dream. It was something I was going to do. I was going to work hard to be one of the Birmingham Black Barons and play ball at Rickwood Field. That's what I did. It was my start, my first job. You never forget that. Rickwood Field is where I played my first home game, and playing there was it. Everything I wanted. I'd like to be there, but I don't move as well as I used to, so I'm going to watch from my home, but it will be good to see that. I'm glad that the Giants, Cardinals, and MLB are doing this, letting everyone get to see pro ball at Rickwood Field. Good to remind people of the great ball that has been played there and all the players. All these years, it is still here. So am I. How about that? Here you can see people are responding and reacting to what's happening. This woman is filming on her phone what's happening up on the field and the scoreboard. I'm not sure if the umpire took his hat off in tribute or if he just took his hat off to let his head breathe for a minute. But this is what was happening. I think it was the 6th inning, maybe the 7th inning. It was before the 7th inning stretch. I do know that. Now you can see there's a few more people. This is still the minor league game, Tim, if you're listening. So it filled in a little bit. This is not the next day's game. There were more there the next day, but this is the fans reacting to what's happening out on the field. It's kind of a standing tribute, and people are filming and doing, recording whatever was happening there with regards to May's passing right while we were all there. And then focus moved to places like this. When people realized what was going on, you see this guy down here. He's taking a picture of the Willie Mays Pavilion, number 24. Like I said, it was more than just surreal. We were sitting. The press section was section 24. I looked at Barry Bloom sitting next to me, and I said, Barry, you know what section we're in, don't you? And he didn't realize it at the time, but we were in section 24. This is the back of the grandstand. I turned around to take a picture out at that carnival area that you saw before, and noticed that we happened to be in section 24. It was a full moon over the ballpark that night. And here's the end of the game. You can see the umpire crew is walking off the field, and the players are congratulating each other, the winning team out shaking hands on the mound. The next day, we went to the Negro Southern League's museum. And what did we see? More Willie Mays stuff. So they had some great Willie Mays. This was already in place. They didn't put it in just because he died the previous night. It's already part of the museum down there. This display tells the story of the greatest Birmingham team of all time, the Black Barons. And you can see some Negro Leagues Hall of Famers and legends. There's Willie Mays right up there. That's a famous shot of the 48 team. After they won the Negro League World Series, and little 17-year-old Willie Mays' head is in the back there. Here's a nice display case on women in the Negro Leagues. Toni Stone and Connie Morgan and Mamie Peanut Johnson are the ones we all know about, and they're well represented in this museum. This is Phil Dixon, great Negro Leagues historian and author, and I'll tell you what, I'm surprised I didn't put more pictures of all the people who came out to that event there that day. It was a who's who. Everybody came down to the Negro Southern League's museum the day after the minor league game and before the major league game. Then we went back out to the field for the next day's game, and now the Mays stuff has been turned into kind of a memorial. These flowers weren't there the day before. They were put there after he passed, when we got news of his passing. There's that crow's nest I showed you earlier. PA announcer or whoever sits up there. I'm not 100% sure. This is pre-game on the day of the Major League game. There were some dignitaries coming in. This guy, I believe his name is Bill Gleason, and he was a guy who actually played with Willie Mays back in 1948, still alive. And I think he's a preacher at one of the churches down there. I remember reading about him in the local paper, and they were conducting a live interview with him as he was coming into the ballpark that night. This woman, I think her name was Donna. It was either Donna or Diane. I know it started with a D, but she was the usher in the section right there behind home plate, the tunnel. And we got to know each other pretty well during the 2 days I was in town. I can only hope I see her again sometime because I felt like I made a new friend. There's that memorial tribute to Willie. There was also a mural on one of the buildings with this exact same painting that had just been installed in Birmingham itself, in the city itself. And we were closer to the museum than the ballpark, but we went and took a look at that too. This bus makes its way around the country, oftentimes carrying youth league teams. It's a Negro Leagues tribute bus. Here it says Birmingham Black Barons Baseball Club. I saw it another time in Cooperstown at the East-West game, and it said Anderson Monarchs Baseball Club, which I think is maybe its origins. I got inside and looked at it, and I said, this looks very familiar to me. I know I saw a photograph of this recently, and then it was this photo. It was Monet Davis was riding with the kids on the Anderson Monarchs a couple of years ago, and I remembered this image in my head. I saw this picture in the New York Times, and when I got on that bus, I said, wait a second. And I knew that I had seen her on that bus before. I was able to snap this picture. They took their team photos outside in front of the ballpark, and here's the Cardinals. I was instructed. I got this beautiful shot on my phone, and then I got the Giants too. When I took the picture of the Cardinals, somebody from the team said, "Hey, you're not supposed to be taking pictures. That's just for the team." I said, well, it's too late. I already got it. I already got this perfect shot. And then I got this other one from the side because they had kind of moved me away from where the team photographer was taking. But that's still a pretty good shot too. And here's my good buddy, Barry Bloom. Some of you guys probably know Barry. He does all sorts of baseball writing. He was MLB.com's beat guy for many years. And I know him from Arizona, but also he's always up in Cooperstown for the Hall of Fame induction. And he writes for a publication that he makes his own assignments for called Sportico, which deals with the business of baseball. And he's got a great beat because he basically just goes wherever he wants to go. And that was a buddy trip for me and Barry. We always hung around with each other, but never quite as intensely as we did during these 3 days. I had no car. I flew in and didn't have a rental car. Barry did. So he was kind enough to pick me up every day in the morning, and we took all 3 of our meals together on both of the days we were in town, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we had a great time enjoying each other's company. Here's Barry doing his work. He's interviewing Tony Clark. I couldn't believe I saw Barry the next day after Willie passed. We're sitting in that little auxiliary press box out in left field, and he's got his laptop on his lap, and he bangs out his story on what happened the day before in no time, in like 30 minutes. I was really in awe of seeing a beat reporter work on deadline as well and quickly as Barry did, and how organized he was in his thinking and how he laid it all out. It was a great story. I read it right after he posted it. I said, "You just wrote that sitting right next to me?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Pretty good." Here's another interesting photo. They were bringing Willie Mays' plaque from the Hall of Fame. It was already part of the plan. He was already going to be, they were already bringing the plaque. And that's Josh Rowich and John Shostakovich and Tom Schreiber are carrying. They look like pallbearers at a funeral. That's how it looked to me. They were carrying the plaque in some kind of contraption that they were going to display it on. And it was a wooden crate that it came in. So it actually required a few people to carry it instead of just one. And they just looked like they were, pallbearers at Willie Mays' funeral at that point. Here's the plaque itself being raised up in the air. And They're gonna put it on that stand somewhere. They moved that stand around a few times during the game. They had it on the concourse and out on the field and in different places where people could go and take pictures of the flag. And there's where it ended up inside the museum inside the ballpark. That's where it stayed, I suppose, during the game. I think pre-game they had it out on the field, and during the game, if you wanted to go and take your picture with it or take a picture of it, you could do so. Here's the lineup in the game. Interesting aside here. This Negro Leagues tribute game between the Cardinals and the Giants, of all of the players on both teams' rosters, there was only one black player, and it was this guy, Wynn, I believe. There was one black player in the game. This Wynn, on the shortstop for the Cardinals, not the pitcher, this Wynn. After the game, I got to walk around down on the field. This is a guy named Chad Olson. He works for Murray Cook. His company does all of this kind of groundskeeping and turns minor league facilities and spring training facilities and international facilities into major league facilities. They do marvelous work. They get hired for all these big projects. And this is a guy I used to work with. He was the groundskeeper in Bowie for the Bowie Bay Sox in the year 2000 when I was the PR guy. So we got to have a little reunion out there on the field and in the stenciled number 24. The game is over. This is them cleaning up after the second game. This is C.B. Buckner, one of the four black umpires who worked the game that day. They're wearing a patch on their shoulder, and the patch on their shoulder says EA, which is for Emmett Ashford. And Emmett Ashford was the first black umpire in Major League Baseball history way back in 1966. So they were acknowledging him in that way on the field for that game. And I asked him if I could get that shot. I know a few people have just joined the conversation. We're getting to the end. Here's a shot. My screen's telling me, there we go. Here's me and Barry. We're getting ready to have our last time together at the great event that we attended to at the Rickwood Field game. And Barry's and I think it's self-explanatory. We look pretty happy to be with each other there at the game. And I wanted to make sure I got the scoreboard in the back. I think that's a selfie. I think I took that picture myself with my hand up there. And I also think that might be the last picture in the show. Oh, one of me and Willie. And I got a question here as well. There's a picture of me and Willie, not taken in Rickwood, of course. I just felt like adding it. All right. What is the question? Hello? Do you have a question?
Hi, I'm Paulette, and I was just going to say I agree with Tim, or whoever recommended, Charlie, that you do this again and that you do it for a bigger group, or maybe you have to do it at the convention or something really big, SABR, because it is awesome. I have a connection with Birmingham because my sister-in-law is the former director of economic development, and although she's now in banking rather than working for the city, this whole game was wonderful in terms of her hearing about it from friends and planning. And as a longtime baseball fan and Negro Leagues fan, at least learning from Norfolk, Virginia, where I grew up, I have been to Rickwood twice. I love the Rickwood newsletter that you probably have read that's published by a friend of mine named Joseph Stewart. It is really good. And I just wanted to put in a plug for Reverend William Greason, whom I did not meet, but that is one person I would love to meet. And like you said, he just turned 100. He was in the Marines in World War II on Iwo Jima, and his story is that he told the Lord, if you save me and get me back to my home, I promise you, I'll give you my life when I get back there. So of course he had to play baseball first, but eventually he did become a minister, and they say he still preaches twice a month at his church in Birmingham. So I hope I get there sometime, but thank you.
Yeah.
And oh, one more question. When you were in the building, when I took the tour with Joseph, who's on the board, he took me up a stairwell to the roof. Did you get to see the really great stairwell that's in the building? It's like a beautiful green, kind of green wood stairwell. But anyway, that would be a great picture for your next presentation.
Yeah, I only saw that stairwell 20 years ago, the first time
Okay.
I was there, 22 years ago. I didn't make it into the this time. I don't know why. I was just preoccupied, I guess, with so many things. But about Bill Gleason, I will say this. There were some great publications that the local newspaper put together for the event, and I have a couple of them, these two sections that were being given out at the ballpark on the different, if you thought to grab them, and they have some incredible stuff. The Bill Gleason story was in one of these, and that's how I got to know. Yeah, there it is. There's the Bill Gleason story right there. So that tells everything.
Yeah.
And he was completely, with it and able to talk and able to present himself there even during the game. People were going up, people were asking him for his autograph. Yeah.
I know I would. Oh, and I'll put in one more plug, then somebody else has to talk besides me. But being
Okay.
from Norfolk, Virginia, one of our favorite citizens of Norfolk is a man named Sam Allen. He's about 88 years old, and he is a veteran of Kansas City and Raleigh, and let's see,
I
I forgot.
think he was there.
Yes, he
I
was
think
there.
he,
Yes,
yeah, I
Sam
remember
did
that name. He
everything.
was there.
He
I
was
talked to
there.
him for a
Yes.
second. Yeah.
And Sam's picture is upstairs where you probably were, up in the second floor. There's sort of a wall of fame, but Sam's picture is up there. So I've seen that. And a friend of mine and I are always following Sam whenever he goes to a Norfolk Tides game down here in my hometown. So just wanted to put in a plug for Sam in case you all had met
Oh,
him.
yeah. Good plug.
But thank you so much, you all.
Thank you, Paulette. Is Tim trying to ask a question?
I am, Charlie. Thank you.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Paulette because those were good comments, and I just sent you a Facebook friend request. But couple of things. Number one, when I started at the Hall of Fame research in 1995, there was a really cool young guy who I think was named Chris, and he was the director of Friends of Rickwood Field. And he passed away unexpectedly in his 20s or 30s. And so I wondered if you or anybody knows about him. I kind of think he might have written a book about Rickwood as well. And then the second thing, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your volunteer work, very informal, to take care of Emmett Ashford's grave and other baseball graves in Cooperstown.
Sure. I don't know if I ever met Chris. 95 might be a little bit before my time, but I do have some published material that maybe that book that I was flipping through the pages was written by him in the first part of the presentation. I'm going to have to go back and look again. And yes, Emmett Ashford, I believe you, Tim, alerted me to the fact that he was buried in the cemetery in Cooperstown. I had already been visiting other graves there. Harry Skillman, whose funeral you and I both attended, and I've learned about who else, other people who are buried there over the years. But I remember the first time I saw Emmett Ashford's grave in 2016, I was upset at how it looked. It was not clean. It had overgrown with moss and fungus, and you would have to really know it was there to even see it. And when I found it, I got a hold of the caretaker at the cemetery, and I asked him if it would be possible to have it power washed because I saw that he had a power washer, and he agreed, for a price to do that for me. And I created a shadow box that explained his place in history, which a lot of people still don't know about Emmett Ashford being the first black ump in the major leagues. And I put in the shadow box other uh, items relative to other pioneers, other black pioneers in baseball. I put a picture of Bill White in there and Bill Lucas, the first GM. I put a picture of Jackie Robinson and Frank Robinson baseball cards and a Len Coleman baseball, and put them all in this. It was a plastic container that was made to put an autographed football in, but it worked perfectly for my purposes. And I tried to seal it the best I could with that 3,000 glue and some tape. But of course, one winter in Cooperstown is all it took to destroy the box completely. And
Yeah.
so, but it served its purpose for a while. And
Hey, Charlie, I wonder if
it
I could
was
follow up by
featured in
asking
some
you to.
photographs. And I still go back and put. Sure.
Yeah, we tend to go back every Memorial Day, I think,
there?
but mostly you. I wonder if
Okay.
I could ask you to name the 4 umpires for the Major League game. Are they all current Major League umpires?
Yes, yes. It was Andy Porter, Adrian Johnson, CB Buckner, and Malachi Moore, I think was the 4th one. Yeah. And they're all
Okay.
still active. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And that was the
Awesome,
crew for
man.
the game. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm flipping backwards in the photos for the people who joined us late. Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, Charlie, I have one. I remember reading as a kid, and I just remembered it. Isn't it true, or not? Didn't the Pirates and the Phillies hold spring training at Rickwood Field?
You know, it would have had to have been way back, but I think it sounds feasible, considering, the era and, and
Yeah.
that the Cactus League and the Grapefruit League had not been fully formed yet.
Yeah.
I know there was spring training in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I want to say like this was around 1920, or, somewhere in that area or era. I would have to look that back up again, but I thought I remember reading years ago that the Phillies and the Pirates at one time held spring training at Rickwood Field.
yeah, I'm gonna believe you. I can look it up and see if it's in any of that publications that I picked up there, but I do think that sounds quite believable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great presentation, by the way. Great pictures. And, wow, you did a great job covering it.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie, what's the scoop? You said there's an annual minor league game. Do we know the date and the opponents and so forth for this coming year?
I think they call that the Rickwood Classic, and I don't know, but I think it might always be Mobile and Birmingham, but I'm not 100% sure. It could just be 2 teams that are in the Southern League, and one of them being Birmingham to host. But it seemed very appropriate to have those 2 teams be the ones that squared off against each other on that occasion. That's for sure.
And this is also the home field of Michael Jordan, right?
And it looks like we got some proof of the Phillies and Pirates just punched in here. 1911 for the Phillies and 1920, and for the Pirates in 1919.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for confirming that. I thought I remembered that many years ago. I read it, and it just for some reason stuck with me. So thank you for confirming.
That's a while ago, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Charlie, this is the home field for Michael Jordan, right?
In 1994, I believe he did play there. I can't remember if Birmingham had a new field yet. I think you're right. It could have been he played there. I don't know what year that ballpark was built in, the one I went to. I'm not 100%. You know what? I think it might have been the other one, Tim. There where where the Black Barons played was a different ballpark over by the highway where I went in the year 2001. I believe it was the team he was on. But I'm not
And
sure.
you
that
said
they were
there are 3 ballparks in Birmingham now. So it would be Rickwood and the Barons' new field, but what's the 3rd one?
That's the one that Jordan played in, the Barons' old field.
Oh, okay. They've had
yeah,
2 since Rickwood. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Howard, are you going to ask a question?
Yeah, Charlie. Yeah,
Yes.
Bob here. Say,
Bob.
what's the current seating capacity of Rickwood as opposed to what it was in the Negro League days?
I don't think they added a whole lot. It seemed to be about a 10,000 capacity field to me, at the most. It might have even been less than that. I think it was maybe even under 10,000. Looking at it now, I'm kind of scanning, and I don't know that if they created any kind of auxiliary seating. I think it was pretty much, there's nothing behind the outfield wall. So I think it was pretty much the way it was for the most part. I don't know how long these bleachers have been there, but they've been there a while, and it didn't seem that section there, that's old too. Yeah, there's nothing. Uh, I think the only changes they made were really to the playing field and the outfield wall and stuff like that. I think the original footprint is still in place.
No, I understand that the old police commissioner, Bull Connor, was the public address announcer for
He
the
was.
Birmingham White minor league team that was there.
Yes, you are correct. And they maybe even did some of that recreation like you saw in Bull Durham, where they're recreating games that they're getting on the ticker when the team was on the road. I believe some of that was still going on back then too. I see Tom has a question.
Yes, I can't remember. Rickwood Field, what is it named after? Is it a human being or the neighborhood or what?
It was somebody's name. Yeah.
And then the other question is CB Buckner, what does his initial CB stand for? Is it Charles
that's a
Boylan or something?
I'm gonna have to dig
Is it-
deeper on that one.
Does anybody know out there?
Tom, I think Rickwood Field was named after a guy by the name of Rick Woodward.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
There you
Rick
go.
Woodward. I'm not sure what his his involvement was with it, but I just always remember that it was Rick Woodward.
Hey, Charlie, I just Googled, it's Christopher Blake Buckner.
There you go. CB, Christopher Blake. Thank you.
Charlie, are any of the displays still there permanently?
If there are, it would be a minimal amount. I'm not sure that I have a feeling they kind of dismantled all of that stuff. A lot of it was definitely set up for the event, and some of it was in very public places, which I'm sure they would not want to leave it without some kind of security or supervision. They may have kept a couple of small cases, maybe something in the gift shop, which can be locked. But a lot of it was just out in the open. So I would imagine, and a lot of it was on loan from the Negro Southern Leagues Museum, which is just a few miles away.
Oh, yeah,
They
that'd
probably
be all
brought
right.
some of their stuff back.
Yeah.
Tim, again?
Hey, Charlie, I think
Yes.
you and Barry should have a podcast, I mean, and call it like Love of the Game,
We have been on podcasts together before, and Barry and I are good friends, but sometimes we get in arguments and they can become quite animated as well.
Absolutely, they could, but and that might make that creative tension might make for a great podcast,
Yeah, usually but we don't argue so much about baseball. We usually argue more about food. I think our arguments usually have more to do with where we want to eat. Edward,
Hey, can you hear me, Charlie?
I can see and hear you.
Oh, wonderful. So the agenda behind this effort, do you see it more as preserving African American baseball history? There's also the architectural. Are we trying to create more interest in preserving the architectural landmarks of American baseball history? How much of this is the continuing effort to re-engage the African American community? MLB seems to have a couple of different angles they're going for here, and what do you see the future of these efforts?
Yeah, that's a good one. I do think that the engagement with the African American community was a driving force behind a lot of what happened in baseball this year. The Rickwood game was part of a series of events, which included the East-West game in Cooperstown. It included the merging of the stats, as you may recall. There was a general recognition an acknowledgement of Negro Leagues baseball as being on a par with Major League Baseball. And I think they were trying to draw attention to all of those things. The part about the ballpark and the refurbishing of the ballpark and just keeping it, preserving it, I think was maybe a fantastic residual consequence of that. But I think there's always been a desire to keep this place functional, and at least in a capacity where you could go visit it. But now it's even better that you could play games there. There's another old ballpark down in Bisbee, Arizona, called the Warren Ballpark, which is nowhere near as sophisticated as this place, but it is as old as it, and it is preserved, and they do play games there. And it was funny, that popped into my head. I thought about this. If Major League Baseball could pull this kind of event off here, would they ever consider having one at the Warren Ballpark in Bisbee, which is even more off the beaten path than this one is? It's on the border of Mexico. I could see they have games there. They have reenactors of old time ball games, different rules and things like that. But also, it's not too far from Phoenix during spring training. If they did want to pull an event like that at the end of the spring or in the beginning of the spring, they could feasibly pull a game off down there, which I'm kind of bucking for.
And then they can reestablish the Elysian Fields in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, well, in the Hinchcliffe Field in Patterson, which has been turned into a museum as well.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, Hinchcliffe Field was the one I was gonna mention though. What's the condition of that ballpark? I've heard they're trying to rehabilitate it to some degree, though.
Yeah, it's a museum. It's a museum. They've turned it into a museum. But I also do think that they are playing there again. And I'll get out there one of these days soon. That's on my list of things to do, and it's not too far from where I live here in Baltimore. It's even closer to where I work in New York at the Jackie Robinson Museum. And my relationship with the Jackie Robinson Museum, I should be out there at some point. I'm assuming that we are winding down.
Hey,
Is that
Charlie, I
correct?
just raised my hand. Could
Okay.
you tell us a little bit about what you're doing for the Jackie Robinson Museum and any tips for visiting, which I'm doing on Saturday?
Well, yes, fantastic. I do programming and communications, not just for the museum, but for the foundation. For the museum, I do programming. For the foundation, I do communications. The foundation has been in place for quite some time. The museum has only been there for 2 years. And so I'm putting together a program, which I got my fingers crossed that I hope will take place very soon. We're in the planning stages, but it does concern umpires and black umpire. The history of black umpires is a program that we're trying to put together right now. And some of these guys that you heard us talking about today might participate in that program. I've been reaching out to a few people who are relative to that. So I write the newsletter for the foundation. During the playoffs and the World Series, I helped to arrange the media appearances by the different people who came to do spots on the museum. We had NBC and CBS from Los Angeles come in. We had NHK, the Japanese public television station, come in. That World Series, just like baseball, it was good for us too. It was a dream come true to have the Dodgers and Yankees play again, whether you root for them or not. It certainly was a high profile event that everybody was able to kind of capitalize on, I suppose.
Sure. And how can we get on the mailing list for the newsletter?
I think you could get on simply by going to the website and signing up. Yeah, and there are things all around. It's in the Tribeca neighborhood. I mentioned we had a conversation earlier, and there's some really good pizza places, and you can walk into the village. You can just walk into the village off. It's a half-mile walk, and there's all sorts of. It's in a cool part of the city, downtown and very easily accessible. You can find the museum if you take an ACE or 123 train from anywhere north, up in Manhattan down. All you got to do is get off at the Canal Street stop, and you basically be staring at the building.
Thank you. That's awesome. I can't wait for Saturday. I got, what's today? Wednesday? I got 2 more days. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't be there that day. I'm going up next Monday. I'm missing you by just a couple of days. So.
Well, we'll get together down there one of these days.
Yes.
So.
Charlie, that was great. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you for putting
May I
this
ask-
together.
May I ask one more question?
Go
Okay.
ahead, Tim.
Thank you. Have you and Gary tried to shop a book about this? I mean, I would love to read a book about your summer with the babe.
You know, I did some writing about it back when it happened, back in 2000 and 2001. I did 2 years taking the Babe Ruth exhibit around the country. Not a whole book. I did put a photo retrospective together that showed in some galleries here around Baltimore. And actually, I hung them at the Hoffman Lane Bistro in Cooperstown during the following summer as well.
I'm pretty sure I saw that,
So,
but it's been a while.
But yeah, Mark Longuth let me hang about 40 pictures in the restaurant, and I gave a
Nice.
presentation in the dining room. So, and
Cool.
and Cooperstown was a spot that we frequented during our travels that year because we would set up in Syracuse or Rochester, all the upstate New York ballparks, and we would have to drive by Cooperstown sometimes. So we would
Did you
stop
do
on our days
Oneonta?
off. We did not set up in Oneonta.
Oh, wow.
I'm familiar with the park, but wasn't on our tour schedule. But Gary and I
Okay.
remain very close friends to this day, and we'll collaborate on something.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Charlie, this has been fabulous here, though. Just a complete coverage of. I forgot it was like back in June or July too. I mean,
It was July, and I have to say I did a lot of things this baseball season, from spring training to the World Series, but nothing hit me as hard as this did. Nothing was as impactful. Nothing was as lasting. And I remember I was flying on the plane back home with some people from Baltimore. We have a guy named Ray Banks who has a Negro Leagues Museum in Owings Mills, and Ray was on the flight with me, and I saw him. He was sitting up front, and I waved at him and said, "Hey, when we get off, we'll talk over by baggage claim, you know." And when we got down to pick up our bags, I said, "Ray, is it just me, or do you feel like we traveled through time?" And he said, "It's not just you." He said, "I feel it too." I said, "I feel like we traveled through time and we made it back." And I said, here we are. we went through some time warp, and here we are at the baggage claim. But he felt the same way.
yeah. Say this has been so great. I'm gonna PM you to see if we can set up a time to do this for SABR Day for the Halsey Hall chapter.
Okay.
Via Zoom in January, perhaps, or if that's okay with you.
All right.
Don't
And,
forget,
and-
everybody, this is being recorded, so it'll be up on SABR's YouTube page. Probably Jacob will take it probably within a few days.
Oh, fantastic. And you know what? This is the first time I ever put this presentation together. I'll put more to it next time. Every time I have to do it again, I find another picture, another story I forgot to include. So we'll do it again, and it'll be a little bit different.
Well, your home chapter should be the guinea pig, so.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys for everything. Obviously, I won't see any of you until the new year, most likely, except maybe like Charlie or somebody who's local. So happy holiday season's greetings. If you need anything, let us know. You know, it's the off season, so we're all bored. So watch your documentaries and your MLB network, and pick up a baseball book or two, and we'll all, you know, head towards February together. So
See you
Winter
soon.
meetings are next.
all right, guys, we'll be in touch. Have a great
All right.
weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Charlie.
everybody. You bet.